Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming on what is fittingly the second day of Construction Safety Week. I'm joined on stage by members of the District Attorney's Office's Rackets Bureau, Assistant District Attorneys James Hanley and Zachary Weintraub, Deputy Chief Michael Ohm, trying to find everyone. Oh, Deputy Chief Michael Ohm's in the back. Principal Deputy Chief Judy Salwin, and Rackets Chief and Acting Investigation Division Chief Jody Kane. And we're joined also by our extraordinary partners in government, my long-term colleague, the Commissioner of the Department of Investigation, Jocelyn Strauber, and another long-term public servant, the New York City Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development Commissioner, Adolfo Carrion Jr. We are all here today to announce charges in a wide-ranging construction fraud case that includes 6 indictments against 8 individuals and 6 companies. The common factor in all of these schemes is simple: greed at all costs. Using cash payrolls, ripping off the New York State Insurance Fund and leaving workers uninsured, conspiring to use minority and women-owned business enterprises solely and explicitly as pass-through entities just to land contracts, corrupting the fair market, taking jobs from legitimate MWBEs, and running smaller contractors out of business. All, we allege, in the name of greed. Let me tell you the specifics. In the principal indictment, we allege that JM3 Construction, its owner, Lawrence Larry Wecker, project manager Michael Spire, and other co-conspirators engaged in multiple criminal schemes to increase their business and revenues to the detriment of their workers and to the detriment of fair competition within this industry. JM3 was a large, non-union drywall and carpentry company that specialized in government-subsidized affordable housing projects in Manhattan and the greater New York area. JM3 and 2 subcontractors operated with large, multi-million-dollar cash payrolls using a series of shell companies to cash checks that were supposedly payment for legitimate subcontractor services. None of that cash was reported to NYSIF, the New York State Insurance Fund, meaning workers operating in this very dangerous industry were exposed and underinsured. The defendants tried to keep injured workers from going to the hospital so that clients and insurance providers would never discover the job site injuries. And when workers did need emergency treatment, including in one instance more than 45 stitches for a workplace injury, the defendants instructed them to lie about where those injuries took place. In total, the defendants defrauded NYSIF of more than $2 million. But risking their workers' lives to save on insurance was not the end of the defendants' greed. We also allege that JM3 engaged in a pervasive and multifaceted scheme to obtain lucrative government-subsidized affordable housing contracts by using MWBE firms solely as pass-throughs. These firms were subcontractors on paper only. Non-MWB subcontractors and suppliers actually did the work and supplied the goods. And of course, that means that legitimate MWB firms were disadvantaged of that opportunity. MWB firms like Echo Geek Living, L&R Construction, and Urban Strategies of New York were used to secure valuable contracts, but did not perform any construction work or supply any materials. And these were not just tacit understandings, they were explicit agreements. So for example, you'll see here, and what does a drywaller do exactly, from someone who was supposedly in that business? It's clear, and as we allege, the firms never intended to do any of the construction work they purported to perform to the detriment of other MWBE companies. But the greed also did not stop there. In addition to their insurance and MWBE fraud, Wecker and JM3 allegedly stole money meant for subcontractors by never making good on promised payments, i.e. alleged theft. One newly formed company's young executives were forced to shutter their business when JM3's payments never came through. And they made sure that they got the best contracts by paying kickbacks in exchange for insider information. Contracts with seriously inflated budgets to make room for, we allege, illegal substantial bribes. The wide-ranging impact of this alleged corruption fraud is significant. When the field is rigged, law-abiding companies and legitimate MWBEs are cheated out of much-needed contracts. And when executives care more about their bottom line than their employees and more about their greed and lining their pockets than the law, hardworking New Yorkers suffer. Our ongoing work in this area should make clear that we will not tolerate fraud in the construction industry, particularly at the expense of New York's workers. As I mentioned at the top, we are privileged to work with phenomenal law enforcement partners, and I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Strauber.
Thank you, District Attorney Bragg, and thank you to all our partners who worked this investigation. As charged, and as you've heard, these defendants, among other crimes, engaged in an extensive deceptive scheme to obtain city and state subsidized affordable housing contracts by making it appear that legitimate minority and women-owned business enterprises were providing goods and services on their projects. In fact, the defendants' companies or other non-MWBE firms were providing those goods and services. The charged conduct includes falsifying business records and offering false instruments for filing with the city's Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development, and with New York State. As alleged, various defendants, including certified MWBEs, worked together to create the false impression that MWBEs capable of performing the necessary work were involved in these construction projects when, in fact, the work was being performed by others. The MWBE defendants, as you've heard, received so-called pass-through payments for their role in the scheme. This alleged criminal conduct deprived legitimate and capable minority and women-owned enterprises of construction opportunities in the city. Exposing this aspect of the fraud was DOI's focus in this investigation. The MWBE program is an important New York City effort to promote greater equity in government contracting, and the criminal conduct at issue here frustrated that goal by denying businesses historically excluded from government construction projects their rightful seat at the table. There are several further steps that our agency is taking in light of these indictments. First, we will be submitting a caution in the city's passport system for each of the indicted companies, alerting any city agency contracting officers who query those companies in connection with potential future city contracts. Second, we will be referring to the relevant certifying city and state agencies all of the certified MWBEs implicated in the conduct charged in the indictment for whatever action those agencies deem appropriate. While we are unaware of any allegations that construction of the affordable housing developments or of any other buildings was unsafe, we have referred the relevant addresses included in the indictments of those projects to DOB for its review and to take any appropriate action as a precaution. Finally, in an effort to prevent the misconduct alleged here from recurring, we are reviewing HPD's policies with respect to the review it conducts of MWBE selection and usage to determine whether there are any gaps or any recommendations we can make to strengthen that process to ensure that only legitimate MWBEs capable of and actually performing the work at issue are retained and used on city-funded projects. It is also important to note that none of the defendant companies here are prime contractors on any current city-related construction projects. One company, Big Apple Designers, Inc., is a subcontractor on 2 currently active HPD projects. HPD is now notified of these indictments so that it can take appropriate action, which can include removing that company from projects or including them on an enhanced review list, among other measures. I want to thank the DOI team that worked this matter, Inspector General Mike Morris, who's standing with us today, Inspector General Gregory Cho, Investigative Attorney Mark Asa, and Chief Investigator James McGilligan. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now hear from Commissioner Carrion. So delighted to have two phenomenal government partners on this and so much other work.
Thank you, District Attorney, and to your investigative team. Thank you very much for this important work. Also, Commissioner Strauber and your team at the department for the investigative work and the uncovering of this disturbing, despicable, greedy, criminal activity. We at HPD and the Adams administration are fighting to right the wrongs of history, to give opportunity more than ever before to minority and women-owned business enterprises. And this kind of activity sets us back. And so I'm here to say thank you to our government partners and the district attorney's team to ensure that going forward, we tighten up whatever practices and protocols we have on our end. So we look forward to working with you, Commissioner, to do that auditing of process. But you all should know that for all our efforts, there's always going to be bad apples that try to steal opportunity from people who have been historically marginalized in our economy. So thank you to the entire team, and we look forward to a partnership in continuing this important work.
Thank you.